Another £50 billion has been pumped into the economy by the Bank of England, what they call quantitative easing, in a desperate attempt to boost demand. The bank's Monetary Policy Committee also pegged interest rates at 0.5%, completing 3 years of record low rates. For savers and pensioners, low interest rates mean lower incomes. And the economist who coined the term quantitative easing says that while the medicine is hurting, it isn't working. Our economics editor Faisal Islam reports from Hampshire.
In the Tory shires, there's a rebellion stirring as retirees see the hand of the Bank of England's money printing, or quantitative easing, in their shrinking pension. Meet David Bone. He retired 9 years ago on this relatively healthy monthly pension fixed at about £1,100 a month. Then this month, this happened, as the pension reset to take into account the record low interest rates in government borrowing.
It's just dropped off the edge of a cliff.
To?
Well, 600, and you can see the figures on there.
So that's nearly halved, basically?
It's halved. It's halved.
It's halved?
Yes.
And that's been driven essentially by the low interest rate environment, quantitative easing?
Low interest rate, quantitative easing, and, of course, government policy.
The Bank of England's policy, extended today, drives down long-term interest rates for the benefit of borrowers, businesses and homeowners. But it also drives down returns for millions of retirees like David.
The Bank of England would argue that you, in the round, have benefited from super low interest rates, from 3 years of money printing, because the economy has been kept out of depression.
I don't need low interest rates. I don't borrow any money. Low interest rates are no good to me at all.
But they're good because
they're good for some people, but they're absolutely no good to me.
It's interesting though, because you're sort of core government supporter.
Yes, I am.
And yet
I was.
This is the problem. Interest rates have tumbled from their normal level to historic lows of 0.5% and stayed there. To provide some extra economic support, the Bank of England created £200 billion of magic money and effectively lent it to the government. Last year, amid euro crisis, the bank extended that to £275 billion, and today, even as that crisis has calmed, the bank extended it again to £325 billion. It's not just that the Bank of England's announced another £50 billion of money printing, or that they've kept interest rates at 0.5%. It's that both these policies have now reached their third anniversary and could last for years more, when originally we were told that they're temporary. And this no-return, low-return world is changing the structure of the British economy, not just for pensioners, but on the high street too. A quick visit to Basingstoke's banks, and you can see how saving no longer pays. So in there you'd get just 1.6% on £1,000 easy access, but that's actually quite high. And in here it'd be just 0.2% on £1,000, just £2 interest. Richard Werner is the man that invented the term quantitative easing in Japan's lost decades. He thinks that the Bank of England has misfired over the past 3 years.
How we got here, it's a combination of the wrong policies, but also that we're staying at such low interest rate levels. We could have already, be in a situation of full-blown growth.
So they're trying the same policy that hasn't worked, and they're just continuing it?
That's right. They're trying the policy that hasn't worked in Japan for the past 20 years. Japan now entering the third decade of recession, and we need to be a bit more direct about the money injections.
David Bone's already making plans to try to make up for his dwindling pension returns by installing solar panels. Professor Werner thinks the Bank of England itself could invest in the likes of solar power, green QE. It seems unlikely, but pensioners and the economy need more rays of light than they've been getting so far from QE.
So, is the medicine doing us more harm than good? With me now, Ros Altman, Director General of SAGA, the Organisation for Senior Citizens, and Ruth Lee, Economic Advisor to the Arbuthnot Banking Group. Ros Altman, your members feel sacrificed on the altar of a policy that isn't working?
Yes, I think older people seem to have been the sacrificial lambs for this policy, taking money away from older generations who've saved and pensioners coming up for retirement and transferring it to younger borrowers and bankers. Now, how is that going to stimulate the economy when we've got so many older people?
Ruth Lee?
Well, speaking as one of the sacrificial lambs, I suppose I ought to say that I have supported the Bank of England all the way through, even though my savings have been knocked as hard as
So you
anybody
think it's a policy that's working?
Yes,
for a
I do.
start?
And I think the Bank of England, it has actually assessed just what its first £200 billion did to the economy. They compute that it probably added 1.5% to 2% to the level of GDP. It did raise inflation a bit as well. And they say that what they did by the $200 billion was equivalent to cutting base rates by another 1.5%, perhaps up to 3%. In other words, they assess that it did help the economy. And the truth is, we will never know what would have happened if they hadn't done it.
That's true, isn't it,
I mean, the
Rosalind?
counterfactual.
This is a massive experiment. 200 billion was a huge amount of money. We are now putting another 125 billion of new money into the economy, but we're not actually putting it into the economy. What we're doing with it is buying government bonds. That is a very indirect way of trying to stimulate the economy, and I believe it's not actually worked. It's not working, and it's not going to work. In fact, as far as we can see, quantitative easing and creating money to buy gilts is going to damage the economy from here.
And it's going to create an inflationary problem in the future, you believe?
We've already got some of the inflation that we're going to have. Pensioners are going to be permanently poorer for the rest of their retirement because anyone buying an annuity is finding the rates have been forced against them. Anyone in income drawdown, as we've seen from Mr. Bone, is having their income lowered.
Ruth Lee, isn't it the case that this is going on much longer than anyone thought?
Absolutely. I mean, the truth is the economy's got all sorts of difficulties. It is slowing down. The GDP in the fourth quarter of last year actually probably fell by about 0.2%. Unemployment is rising. We've got this huge overhang of consumer debt that is dragging the economy down.
So on what basis do you say the policy is working?
Could I just say what the problems are with the economy? And of course, you can't have any fiscal stimulation because of the problems on the public finances, added to which there are problems in our major export market, which is the Eurozone. So really, we are left with a very accommodative monetary policies. It's exactly what the bank has done.
But it's a leap of faith, isn't it?
But it is not an act of faith. The truth is it has kept interest rate down, so it has helped the people who have got debt already. Now, I take your point. It's an intergenerational thing, but we are where we are with our economy. And, if we'd had interest rates which were much, much higher than they are today, can you imagine what would have happened to the housing market? It would have probably been devastating. And yet we were told by the Council of Mortgage Lenders yesterday that repossessions last year were the lowest since 2007, all the way through, and there was lower than 2008, 2009, 2010. Now, with a better housing market than otherwise would have been the case, I keep emphasising this, we don't know exactly what would have happened if they hadn't done this, but I can almost guarantee it would have been worse. And the truth is we need to get a growth back into this economy one way or another, and given all the other difficulties we've got, what can we do but have a Bank of England?
Rosalind, some people would say there's a bit of balancing out going on here because your generation of pensioners right now are probably better provisioned than the generations below.
That's absolutely not the case. And in fact, people coming up for retirement now, most of them, I'm not talking about the very well-off few, most of them are finding that their pension savings are not delivering much pension income at all. But the most important point for me is that buying gilts is not stimulating the economy.
Interest rates? It is.
Interest rates are already too low.
Yeah.
Inflation is high and interest rates are low. So buying gilts is the least intelligent way of trying to stimulate the economy. If you create new money, lend it directly to small companies who need it. Don't buy gilts.
Well, that's another possibility. But the truth is, by keeping interest rates low, as I've just explained, for a start, you've helped the housing market, and you'd probably have more more business investment than you otherwise would have had. I say it's all about the counterfactual. Could I just answer this point about inflation? Inflation is going to come down this year. I'm going to put my 10 quid on the table and bet you that.
Okay, but just very briefly, I mean, why should anybody save now?
Well, that's a very good question, but I think,
You can't think of a reason, can you?
Well, look, I'm a saver, and I save because I need some money, but I know I'm not going to get much of a return on it.
Ruth Lee, Ros Altman, thank you both very much indeed.
You.